Not every build has to be the most meta-defining thing in the entire game, but I'm gonna be honest, this build actually shocked me with how good it is. Now, this build's involved all around spamming your finisher as much as humanly possible. You never really have to shoot any of your weapons other than to just weaken an enemy down to proc a finisher, but most of the time when you proc finishers, everything else will become weakened and then you can just finish another enemy, and it gets this chain reaction of you never really having to use your weapons. This is one of the most explosive builds in the entire game in my opinion, between having things like volatile and your exotic proccing 24/7, and every single enemy around you is either just going to flat out die, explode, or get flown into the air a million feet away. This build's a lot of fun and takes advantage of some of our new fragments in the game, and I think you all will enjoy it. And if you all do enjoy, consider subscribing and dropping a like. It goes a long way and I truly appreciate all the support. And finally, if you all would like to see an infographic of this build, be sure to head over to Mobalytics. I will have a link in the description, and my entire build and breakdown will be over there as well. But all right, let's jump right into it, and let's start off with our exotics Severance Enclosure. This has the exotic perk Spheromatic Trigger. I think I said that right. Power melee final blows unleash a damage explosion. Finisher and final blows against more powerful targets increase the radius and damage of the explosion. So this exotic basically turns you into a walking nuke with your melees and finishers causing explosions on every single kill. You can take advantage of this with your power melee, but it'll be way more beneficial to actually use your finisher with some of our fragments that we'll get into in a second. Essentially, like I said in the beginning, all you want to do is just get a target weak, finish them. Eventually other targets will be weak, you can finish them. If your teammates make targets weak, you can finish them. You want to just have your finishers spamming all the time, so make sure you have a good keybind for your finisher because you are going to be using it a lot. This exotic is very fun and honestly shocked me how good it is even in harder content. I don't think this is going to be by far the best in the game for in-game content, but it is a fun option if you want to swap things up. Now let's jump into our subclass, and before I go over everything else, I actually want to go over a fragment first, and that is Echo of Cessation. So this is finisher final blows create a burst of void damage that causes nearby combatants to become volatile. Defeating volatile targets create a void breach. So this is why I said finishers are going to be more valuable with this build because of this fragment alone. Now when you finish enemies, everything around you will become volatile, and also with that explosion going off, you will also proc volatile, and you essentially have double explosions. You're going to have damage from the exotic and the volatile explosion to make sure you can secure kills, and if they don't, they're going to be weak anyway, so you can go finish them and apply this to every other enemy around. With ad density seeming to increase pretty much with every single season we get, this exotic and fragment combination just becomes even more powerful because you don't have to use any of your abilities to actually just get massive ad clear. Now another vital part to this build is our aspect controlled demolition, which says hitting a target with a void ability or volatile explosion makes them volatile. Further damage to volatile targets causes them to explode, granting you and nearby allies health when volatile targets explode near you. So this is going to cause somewhat of a chain reaction. When you get that finisher and it applies volatile to everyone, when it explodes, any other enemy around will also be applied volatile now, which again can explode. So essentially going up and getting one finisher will cause an initial explosion alongside volatile exploding, and that volatile will also spread to explode even more. It is a bunch of explosions with this build. Mr. Torgue from Borderlands would be very happy. But what's really cool about controlled demolition is that it also will heal you and your teammates, so it can kind of play as a support role because every time the volatile is exploding, it's also healing you and nearby allies. Healing you doesn't matter as much because we're going to be taking advantage of Devour, but healing your teammates is always a great option. Now we're going to be taking advantage of Devour with the fragment Echo of Starvation. So picking up a Void Breach or an Overpower grants Devour. Since orbs are very plentiful in the game right now, it's really easy to constantly get Devour up, but also picking up Void Breaches will grant Devour. And if you don't know, Void Breaches also grant class ability energy, but the main thing is we're making Void Breaches with Echo of Cessation as well, because when we defeat volatile targets, which is obviously going to be everywhere, we will make Void Breaches. So again, picking up that, you're going to get class ability and also proc Devour over and over again. Now speaking of class ability, we're also going to be running the aspect Bastion. So cast your super ability to grant an overshield to nearby allies. Casting a barricade grants overshield to yourself and nearby allies, and empowers it, enabling it to slowly regenerate the overshield of allies bunkering behind it and extend their overshield duration. This aspect is just good for survivability purposes. If you need to make sure you get in there and get a finisher on harder content, you can throw this down to get an overshield to run in there to get a finisher. It's very nice for that. It's also good for just securing reses, anything like that. It's just a very support based aspect, and since we're healing our teammates with our other aspect, I figured this will just tie into the build together as well. We can really take advantage of spamming our class ability because of those Void Breaches. Now the final thing about finishers with our fragments is the fact that we're going to be taking Echo of Obscurity. So finisher final blows grant invisibility. So like I said with Bastion, you can kind of pop your overshield to go in to get that initial finisher, but then now when you get that finisher, you're going to come out invisible, which means you can retreat, you can get ready for another finisher to explode everything, and it just makes the survivability of the build a lot easier. It's also very funny seeing a Titan running around invisible because that is just not the norm. Now for other stuff, I am running Ward of Dawn. It's just a very defensive base super. You can run Sentinel Shield if you want to, but Ward of Dawn is just really good for getting a damage buff and also, you know, just protecting your teammates and harder content. I do like to run Rally Barricade since it does have a lower cooldown. If you want to run Towering Barricade for survivability, you absolutely could. You're going to get your class ability back a lot anyway with this build because of the Void Breaches, so that would just pair well with Bastion, but I just run a Rally Barricade again for the lower cooldown. I also just run Shield Bash for movement speed. If you want to run Shield Throw for an overshield, you could, but this is just good for getting around the map faster. Also, it does suppress, which means you can stun overload champions if you do hit enemies with their melee. And then I also just finally run a Scatter Grenade because it does have a very low cooldown, but I'm not really taking advantage of my grenade a lot, other than I will have Devour proc all the time. And my grenade does have some benefits with some of my mods that we'll get into later, but this isn't the main focus of the build. Now for stat distribution, 100 resilience is always the way to go. You get 30% damage reduction, and more so on the Titan, it will also reduce the cooldown of your barricade, which means you can spam Bastion more often. Now for your other stats, again, they don't matter nearly as much at all because you're mainly just going for finishers, which don't require any of your energy. If you want to go for strength, you could, but again, you want to finish people with this build. You're not really worried about your power and melee, but having strength would means you get more shield bashes to suppress targets, but I would mainly just try to get 100 recovery for survivability. Again, you do have Devour, so recovery is not the main thing you want to do, but I just threw it in the 100 discipline because again, we will be taking advantage of some mods with this build that will work with the grenades, and since we're gonna have Devour up 24/7, this just means we can get some faster grenades. So pretty much 100 resilience is the main stat. Everything else you can just kind of work around how you want to play with the build. Now weapons, like I said, nothing matters. Obviously just make sure you have a good weapon for DPS, and then, you know, have a weapon that does do a lot of damage, just so you can weaken a target if you have to get a finisher off. You don't want to just one-shot them so you can't finish them. And obviously it's not a must, but conditional finality is actually really fun with this build because if you get a finisher and go invisible, everything is volatile, and then you can run up and just shotgun the enemy and proc the volatile. But again, you don't have to do this. This is just a fun option I've been messing around with. Now for artifact mods, these don't matter nearly as much either. Sure, you can take your authorized mods to your champion mods depending on whatever you're running in the build. Even things like Shadow Orbs can be pretty good, but there's nothing very crucial to make this build actually function, which is a good thing because that means in coming seasons this build will still work very well on its own. Hopefully in the future we get some sort of finisher artifact mod because that would just turn this build up to 11. But all right, jumping into mods, these are what I'm running. For your helmet, nothing really matters too much. I'm opting in to not take a Siphon because I'm not really trying to kill enemies with my weapon. So I do just have a heavy ammo finder to find more heavy. And I also just have a Dynamo in here since I am going to be spamming my class ability a lot for Bastion overshields. This just means I can get some extra super energy. If you have any energy left over, you can take things like heavy ammo scout. So when you find heavy ammo, it will also find it for your teammates. But in my opinion with this build, this is pretty much the best you can run because nothing really matters too much on your helmet, but these are some nice benefits to get just for passively playing the game. Now for my arms, I am running Void Loader again. You're mainly just use your weapon to weaken enemies and get a finisher, so you can swap this out for literally whatever flavor weapon you are running, or if you want more cooldown stuff you can, but you don't really need to take advantage of any of that. I do just have 2 bolstering detonations equipped, so I will get some class ability energy when I do damage with a grenade. Since I'm getting grenades a lot with Devour, this just means I can transform that into Bastion energy, which is kind of cool. But again, just like the helmet, like there's some stuff that kind of helps out with the build a little bit, but there's nothing too crazy to take advantage of, so this is pretty much the best thing I can recommend. Now for your chest piece, always make sure you have resistant mods. This just helps out your survivability a ton. Swap this out for literally whatever encounter you're going into. Now for your boots, again, just like the other armor, like these kind of help. I just have double insulation and absolution. This will just make it if there's orbs on the ground, I will get my class ability back just a little bit faster, which I guess is pretty good for this build. But again, like you're never really going to take advantage of this that much, but it is nice to have in there in the background if you do pick up an orb. Now the main thing is your class item. This is where things come into play a lot. So I am running Empower Finisher, so this will give me an armor charge when I finish an enemy. So this just means I will pretty much always have a guaranteed 1 armor charge all the time. Now speaking of finishers, I'm also going to be taking Proximity Ward, so I gain a powerful overshield while performing a finisher. What's really cool with this is that obviously you can use your Bastion to get in there. When you get that finisher, you'll have this overshield shield also protecting you, and then you go invisible. So there's really no time you're ever going to die, and if you are weak when you're doing it, you will also proc Devour to heal you to full, which is very, very nice. And then finally, I am running a utility kickstart, so this means when I use my class ability, I will just get some class ability energy back. If I have an armor charge, it will also consume that to give me more, and obviously we're getting armor charge from always finishing enemies. So with all this set up together, you should pretty much have infinite class abilities to spam for Bastion, alongside being able to just finish enemies all the time without ever dying. That's pretty much the build. As a quick rundown, again, with Severance Enclosure, you're trying to finish enemies. Pairing that with Echo Cessation, you're exploding everything. Controlled Demolition is also chaining those explosions everywhere. Once you get that finisher, you're going invisible. You're also going to be having a powerful overshield while you're doing it. You have Bastion to also apply overshields to you if you need them to get into a fight. Your grenades are also going to be refilling your class ability cooldown. Your class ability itself will be refilling your cooldown, alongside finishers also helping that class ability cooldown. Even your boot mods can help with the class ability, and the things like Dynamo will give you some extra super energy to spam all the time, since you're going to be spamming class abilities everywhere, because you will also have Void Breaches alongside all the other class ability stuff I went over. I think I have said the word class ability at least 1 million times in the past 3 seconds, but overall you're pretty much just unkillable with this, and you can explode everything on the battlefield. Now if you were curious about the transmog, this is what I'm running. If you want to make your Titan look like this, I really didn't have a specific thing in mind. I tried to make it look like an explosive S character, but also a little stealthy since I do go invisible. I think I achieved it pretty well. I think it looks pretty cool, especially the all black. So if you want to copy this down, this is what I'm running on the Titan. But all right, that's going to do it pretty much for the build. Let me know what you all think about in the comments below. Have you tried playing a build like this before? Are you gonna give it a try now that you've watched the video? I would love to know your thoughts and opinions on this, and also let me know if you want to see more fun builds or just stick to meta builds. Making builds like this is always fun for me, and trying to swap it up a little bit, and it's always surprising to actually see how good some of these can perform, and they're just kind of outshined by the better stuff in the game, but by no means does that mean they're bad. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, like I said in the beginning, consider subscribing and dropping a like. The support really does go a long way, and it is truly appreciated. We're on the road to 40,000 subscribers, so I would love to have you on this journey, and if you're curious about joining my Discord or anything like that, all of that will be linked in the description as well. However, just know that watching the video is way more than enough, and that every single bit of support from you all is truly appreciated. Thank you all so much for watching this one, and have a great day. Peace.